from the get-go. It turns out that Alaska had some pretty tough weather. We got to spend a lot of time sitting on the runway waiting for the winds to come down so that we could take off. So we're playing catch-up here. I would like to introduce the delegation with me. Of course, Madeline Bordallo you know very, very well. She and I came to Congress together, a great colleague and great friend. Dr. Tom Price from Georgia, from the Ways and Means Committee. We've got a lot of doctors here today. This is Doc Hastings, not a doctor, but Doc Hastings, the chairman of the Natural Resources, the committee. And then Tom Latham from Iowa on the Appropriations Committee. And Richard Hudson is on my committee, the Education Workforce Committee, and others. Mike McIntyre from North Carolina on the Armed Services Committee, along with me and Madeline, and Dr. Phil Rowe on the Education Workforce Committee, and others. So we're delighted to be here. We'd like to hear what you got to tell us.
Well, actually, I wanted to ask you, first of all, if you can share with us the purpose of your trip to Guam, and then maybe we can take it from there. I mean, we went in and checked, of course, exactly what your committee entails, but at the same time, we'd like to know specifically your visit, because several others here actually chair other committees that may be of interest as well to my colleagues.
Sure. We're not restricted to the issues under the jurisdiction of the Education Workforce Committee, although the primary purpose of our trip, the whole trip that we're taking, is to look at education both for younger students, what we call K-12, of course, higher education, and see how that interacts with the workforce, or the people coming through school ready to go to work. And so we're doing that not only here in Guam, but as we go on to the other countries on our trip. But as I indicated, there are at least 3 of us here who are members of the Armed Services Committee, so we're interested in that. You have a very large military presence here, a very important one, so we're interested in that as well. So I don't think we have to limit the discussion to any one area. We're here to learn more about Guam. For some of us, it's the first time we've been here, or we were here very briefly many years ago when we were much younger, passing through only to get fuel on the way to the Western Pacific. But we're delighted to be here and learning as much as we can about policy issues, political issues, cultural, all those things.
Well, thank you very much for that, and giving us a broader spectrum and the things that we can talk about. So I'd just like to go ahead and start, if I may, and then I welcome, of course, my colleagues. I'm a former educator myself, and I chair the Committee on Education right now. And there's some things that I'm also concerned about, is that there are, in order to explore, of course, the advancement of education here in Guam, one of the things that we've found is that many times Guam would not be included in some programs established in Congress, because sometimes we're considered a state and other times we're not. And I'm not saying that we want to be totally included because of some of the strings attached to it, and knowing, of course, our economy, that we may not be able to match a program and eventually get to the point where we would totally have to support that program. So, but others, of course, in which, I know our Congresswoman has a grants desk in which she and her staff are monitoring some of these programs. So I just want to make sure that, those, of course, that's critical to preparing our children for the workforce, that we would be recipients of that. I also understand that you have sponsored this Success and Opportunity through Quality Charter Schools, and I'm kind of curious exactly how can that act best help our schools here in terms of seeking some of these federal grants?
I'm not sure. I need to learn more about the state of K-12 education, because that's what charter schools are, public charter schools that address kindergarten through the 12th grade. And as you probably know, there are areas in the United States where the traditional public school system is simply not doing the job. So in places like northern Minneapolis, or in New York and Harlem, for example, you have a situation where more than half of the kids are not graduating. When they graduate, they're not ready to go on to college and go on to... Thank you. There's a red light here. I should have been watching with that a little more closely. I think the traditional public schools in some places are just not taking care of our kids, and so you have parents who are frantically looking for other options. As an example, I visited a charter school in Minnesota that provides education for kids in the North Minneapolis area. And by the way, the start of the public charter school movement was in Minnesota, so we've had it for a long time, and we've had some good ones and we've had some poor ones. But back to my example of a good one, we visited a school in northern Minneapolis. It has 430 students, has a waiting list to get into that charter school of 1,000 kids. We talked with the parents who feel like this is their only hope. This is a dream fulfilled, that they now have a chance for their child to get the good education that will prepare them to go on to college or to a meaningful career. So in some cases, I think it is it's almost critical. In other cases, not. And I'm not sure what the situation is in Guam, and that's, we're interested to hear about that. There are places in the continental United States and the other states where kids are getting a great education through a traditional public school system, and some places are not. But the legislation that we passed was hugely bipartisan. It was co-authored by Congressman George Miller, my counterpart, the ranking member on the committee, senior Democrat on the committee. He and I authored it, and it got over 360 votes out of 430. It's very, very bipartisan. This isn't a Republican-Democrat thing. This is where you have places in the United States, in the states or in the territories, and we're delighted to hear from you what the situation is here, where the kids are simply not getting the education that they need. This is a way to, through a public school system, public charter school system, to give them that chance. So how applicable it is here or not, I don't know, Madam Speaker.
Well, thank you. And I wanted to take it one step further to go into then the military buildup, because in the SEIS, it actually addresses a situation where they may need to build a new school or go in and expand their current. And one of the questions I'd asked even at the first SEIS in 2010 was the incorporation of integrating again our school children. Many years ago, all of the military kids used to go to school in our school system. They have separated now since then, so our children are segregated from those inside the base and outside the fence. And we're hoping then, of course, that with the need to either build a new school, that consideration then be given, that it be built in the community. And we try to integrate our school children. And for educators here, we all know is that we're going to have to start at a very early age in order for us to start to remove, this whole notion of segregation and discrimination. We got to start with our young children. And I'm rushing because of the time. But one more question, then I'll open it up to my colleagues, is that, and we've actually brought this to the attention of Senator Levin and Senator Webb when they were here the last time on the end of our meeting. And I know many times the delegation feel that when they're coming out here, we're going to be saying, give us everything in the kitchen and all that. But one of the things that I like for you to very seriously consider is that you can help us to help ourselves. And one of those would be to really look at some of the restrictive laws or that's currently that affects Guam, because these are impediments. And two of the really biggest ones, of course, that affects our economy is the Jones Act and the cabotage laws. And we're not asking for full repeal of those laws. We're just saying that there should be a waiver for us here in Guam. We're so far away, practically 98%, if not greater, of all of our goods are shipped into Guam, which makes, of course, shipping very expensive because they have to come through Hawaii. And as you know, because they're all U.S. built ship, U.S. workers. So it makes it very hard for our local economy to grow, and even for our local businesses to actually thrive when things becomes very expensive. So, help us in that respect so that we too can help ourselves at the same time to grow our economy. Mr. Vice Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Madam Speaker. Mr. Chairman, I was reading the Congressional Research Service report that was done on the deployment of military out here. And since yours is education and workforce, I was wondering if maybe you might address the issue of whether or not there would be continued H-2 laborers being brought in for the buildup, or is that something that is being considered by your committee?
Thank you for the question. It is not being considered by the committee. As you know, there is a great deal of discussion going on in Congress about immigration in the large, and that would certainly include the H-2 visa system. I don't know that I actually know anybody who's happy with it for one reason or another, whether it's H-2A or H-2B visa system. We are not actively looking at it. I am interested to hear about your concerns with it. I'm sure that you, like most places, would like to have a lot of local labor involved. So I'm interested to hear what your concerns are specifically.
Well, I probably share Governor Abercrombie's position. I think we discussed that with Senator Ben Pangilinan at the Denver Convention with the Congresswoman about the fact that we wanted to make sure that it was a local workforce that had first priority before there was any opening for any H-2 laborers. And so, and I noticed that in this Congressional Research Service report that came out just last month, April 28th, it talked about Congressman Abercrombie at the time, and his position. And I was just wondering, maybe on your way over here, did you stop in Hawaii? Did he discuss that issue with you? And I know that, as the speaker was mentioning, a number of our members have been working with Hawaii about the Jones Act, and there is a big move on that one position. I thought maybe that members of the committee might want to address that.
We did not stop in Hawaii. We went through Alaska. I guess I better not.
They're on the same. They're part of that whole thing.
I better not comment on either one of those, except to say that the weather in Alaska was not very friendly or cooperative. Of course, I know Governor Abercrombie pretty well because Neil was on the Armed Service Committee with Ms. Bordallo and Mr. McIntyre and I. I think he's just a terrific guy. But we didn't have a chance to stop and talk with him, and I can see where you would have concerns with the Jones Act because of the availability of shipping. You are, at least from the perspective of Minnesota, you are a long way out here, and I can see where that might be a concern. But we have not taken that issue up specifically. It has to do with the Guam or the territories, for that matter.
Madam Speaker. Warm hafide to all of you guys. Welcome to Guam. Thank you, Congresswoman, for leading the delegation with these fine folks here. As oversight of tourism, I can ask you a bunch of things that how Uncle Sam could work with us in making sure tourism is our #1 economic driver. It represents about 60% of the people. But I know there are other things that we can also talk about, and I wanted to see there are programs that the United States has been working in inviting other countries to come and visit. And from border patrol concerns to the lines with Customs and Border Patrol, how can that be eased so that people coming here could be come in a lot sooner? It took me 14 minutes. I just came from Korea this morning. It took me to disembark the plane to get into the taxi area. It took me 14 minutes. Here it takes about 3 hours to get in, 2 to 3 hours. And that's one concern. And also as co-chair of Veteran Affairs, I want to ask about continued training for our veterans who've come home. We've had 600 veterans, soldiers who just came back. And what other career training can you provide for our veterans who Guam is very patriotic, and we want to know what programs out there that we can tap into.
Let me start by addressing tourism for just a minute. God's already done a pretty good job for you here. Looking at the water on the beach this morning, I can see where you've got a pretty big attractant already for tourism. I suppose it is a fair distance to travel, but not that far if you're coming from Korea or Japan or maybe China.
Well, we like to say we're Asian America and America and Asia.
Yeah, great. I got it. Well, you certainly have all the basics necessary. In terms of time that it takes to go through and what Customs is doing, I'm really not in a position to address that. As far as workforce training, it's not just an issue for veterans, although there are bills that have passed and there are special provisions for veterans, and the Veterans Affairs Committee is working on those. But in general, we're trying to make it easier for anybody who's looking for work to get the kind of training that they need, the skills, the certificate they need for the job. And it's back to the issue of do you have the workforce here that is trained and has the certificates necessary to do the work. So we have legislation that, again, is bipartisan legislation that we have worked with the Senate, Republicans and Democrats, to reauthorize the Workforce Investment Act, to streamline that thing, make it work much more efficiently, be more responsive, so that if you need a skill, you don't have to go through a bunch of sort of bureaucratic red tape till you finally get to the point where you go and get the training you need. You can go in and get it specifically. That will help you have the skill and the certificate you need for the job that's available at the time. And that should be true whether you're a veteran or whether you're not a veteran. Now, you have a lot of veterans here, so I can see where you would jump right to that, particularly if that's your committee. But in general, that needs to be made better, and I think we've got some pretty good legislation that will help that across the board. I asked the governor specifically about, do you have the education here in the terms of the community college and the technical academy to provide that training? I think that you do. Seems to me that you do. You just need to make sure that it is connected so that the student, typically a non-traditional student, not a kid coming right out of a high school, but somebody who is perhaps a veteran now is looking for another skill, can go and get the training they need for the job that's available. That's been one of the big problems we've had around the country, is that the requirement, the openings for jobs changes faster than the training that gets them ready. So you're being trained for a skill that's no longer in demand, and there's a demand for a skill out there that business can't find, and I assume that that's true on Guam as it is everywhere.
Thank you, and Situs Mosi, and Zao na be no yam to donkor nagar sitmen to me finatun mi to gini gita Guam Situs Mosi todos. Thank you very much. I'd like to express and welcome you to Guam, and hope that you enjoy your stay here. As we look at Asia and America's posture in Asia and what it's trying to do now with its rebalance, that's the new word, I guess, is to rebalance. Well, one of the biggest challenges as well as opportunities that Guam's looking at, of course, is the military buildup with regards to the transfer of the Marines from Okinawa to Guam. And how does that speak of to the balance in our community? As in every community, ours is probably most impacted because of the size of our community. Much smaller community, and any group of people that comes in affects the balance in our community. Now, the balance in this military buildup is supposed to come from the supplemental environmental impact study that is supposed to be done with the change in the scope of the movement of the Marines from Guam to here. And one of the challenges that we face, of course, is it going to be balanced for our community? I think that what we have read in the supplemental EIS with regards to this new scope of the Marines moving to Guam shows an imbalance. And when that imbalance occurs, then burdens fall on the communities that have to carry the load. And in this case, the burden, at least from the supplemental EIS, falls on the civilian community. That the revenues that are going to be generated by the movement of the Marines to Guam, by construction and so forth, is going to be less than what we need to do to beef up our education, our workforce training, our crime, police department and such. And so we're trying to find the necessary resources to assist our community in that. The other issue that, of course, is very contentious for us is land. Land is our identity as an indigenous people of the world. You know, we're one of the indigenous peoples of the world, the Chamorros. And without land, we lose our identity. And so what we have here, of course, is the military taking a look at alienating more land from the Chamorro people. And we have that with regards to Ritidian. As you know, you recently voted on the NDAA, which included the amendment from our good Congresswoman. Even our good Congresswoman, when she was Lieutenant Governor of Guam, signed local laws that says all available lands really should be returned to the people of Guam whenever possible. And what we're doing with regards to the way we're trying to balance this military buildup is, rather than moving closer to maybe returning excess lands like the Ritidian area, we're moving further away with the integration of the Ritidian area as a surface danger zone for the firing range. And we believe that if you take a look at the SEIS and you remove one single element of the firing range requirement for the Marines for active training on Guam, which is a 50 caliber machine gun, you can remove the placement of the surface danger zone over the Ritidian wildlife area. And I really think that that's something that needs to be looked at in the SEIS, move it away, plan alternative areas for it, and so forth, so that we can continue to have the opportunity to work with the federal government in the future. The good Congresswoman put in the NDAA, maybe a relocation of the wildlife at some point. And if that's open, then that's a ray of hope for the original landowners. But we know that those ideas and those concepts are not dead, at least. We're very, very grateful for that. They've resurfaced, they're being discussed. And again, the integration of the Ritidian wildlife for the protection of our critical habitat at this point in time is really something that we need to ensure does not get consumed in this whole military buildup, because it really throws the balance of this military buildup with regards to the interests of the local people and the interests of the federal government. So those are some of the issues that we look at. We understand what we need to contribute to the country and the nation with regards to the defense and security of the world, and we have done that. We have done that through our service of our young men and women in the National Guard and deployments to the theater of operations in the Middle East and, of course, Afghanistan and so forth. So those are some of my thoughts and my comments.
Thank you. From my perspective, and I think it's fair to say, speaking for my colleagues here from Congress' perspective, we've been pretty pleased to see that you have the government of Guam, the government of Japan, the Department of Defense, and speaking as somebody who spent 25 years in the United States Marine Corps, the Marines working together to come to a resolution. I was stationed in Okinawa. I was stationed at Marine Corps Air Station Fatima, so I'm very aware of the sensitivities that are involved there. I think that the move is an important move and a good move, and I'm heartened that the governments are working together to address the issues you brought up and others. So we'll see how that plays out.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Welcome again. Thank you for making the time and taking the effort to be with us on our island. There's a lot that I would like to say, but in the interest of time, I won't. But I thank you for giving us the opportunity to interact. I think all these issues have really shown that our community has a voice, and more voices have been heard, and I think that's important. Workforce development and education are crucial to everything else. When Congresswoman Berdalia was the chair of education in the Guam legislature decades ago, we worked on school-to-work measures and workforce development. Now I'm working with Madam Speaker on charter school, and we're addressing state preschool. I think my biggest concern, and perhaps John can send me everyone's email and I can individually write to you. For me, what really would be helpful and pivotal is how our teachers are prepared to teach. I think the teacher preparation programs, not only at University of Guam but across the nation, really need to be reformulated. The president of Guam Community College, Mary Okada, does a very good job. She has won all kinds of awards. She has succeeded in getting people. She's got a veterans program. She's there. She's on it. She's got it. But I think our teacher preparation program at UOG needs to be readjusted. Right now, we're not ready. We're not preparing our teachers for this millennium. It just has changed. I was a teacher for 30 years. It's just changed. It's different. It's different. The landscape is different. We're not preparing our teachers to prepare all kids for life. We're not promoting with excellence, and we're not providing them support. The whole family structure has changed. I mean, it's just different. Most of us are single parents. Most of us are smaller. We're living longer, and we're not ready for it. And so all of these social issues are coming our way. And so when you talk about workforce development, I'm 56. But I may be looking, how am I going to earn a living when I turn 66? And so all of those, as you were talking about, is on the table. So for me, though, what's key is the preparation programs. And it does start in preschool. It absolutely starts, that whole work ethics, the discipline, and all of that. So my colleagues here would also like to say something, but that's what's, what occupies me, is how do we nudge our institutions to get to where they need to get. And hardly anybody thinks this is urgent. Everybody thinks we have all the time in the world. But we don't. Behavioral wellness is a huge issue. It's a huge issue, not only for veterans, but for our manumko, those are our older people, right? And so those are it's life. That's what it is, it's life. And how do we do that so that, as our children grow up, they're healthy and they're happy and they're working. They're working. That's real key for me. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Well, thank you for those years of teaching. And I will just say briefly, because I know others want to talk, that I share your concern about teacher preparation. We're spending, as we look at the reauthorizing the Higher Education Act, and as we looked at the reauthorizing the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, teacher preparation, who gets into the schools, what they're taught, are they ready, all of those things, that you're right on. It's really, really important.
Mr. Chairman, members of the delegation, thank you for being here. We appreciate your presence. I'm sure you've seen on the floor there are some disagreements on your side of the aisle and our side of the aisle as well. I want to say that I appreciate first and foremost the relocation of the THAAD battery to Guam. That has been a wonderful addition, and we had a unclassified briefing, many members of this legislature, and I want to say that $1.5 billion transfer to Guam is something that is very impressive, and we thank you for that. I would like to say also that the 4 pillars do represent, as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, a serious movement on Build Up 1 to Build Up 2 of how this is going to be worked out. So I agree with your position with regard to that. My position in terms of what I'd like you to take back, because we've discussed a lot of complex issues, but I think as you've discussed, Mr. Chairman, on how to work together, is maybe the congressional delegation can go back and work up meetings, discuss the continuation of JIGPO and that relationship in terms of how that would transition from when the buildup has been moved to the next phase, to keep that constant negotiation and relationship so that we can work out education, workforce development, and other issues that were brought up here at the table and with regard to our colleagues. So I think that continued dialogue and the commitment from the U.S. Congress and the U.S. government overall, DOD, to keep those lines of communication open and to ensure what our community asks for by and large, and the majority of this community asks for, is a compatibility that inside the fence and outside the fence has a harmonious relationship. So that's what I would ask you for, as you go back and work with our good Congresswoman on mitigating all the issues that have been brought up over the years. But I think that that continued dialogue is going to be something that's going to be helpful for all of us. So thank you for your trip to Guam.
Well, but yes, John has indicated it's time. So I'd just like to thank all of you for, coming and meeting with the legislature and the other leaders of the island. And I hope that by listening to us and taking our input, and the input, of course, raised by our citizens on their concerns about the buildup, that even then, that by the time you're ready to make your decision, that we hope then that all those will be considered before the ROD is signed, and the master plan that is yet to be delivered to Congress, and that the community's concerns are being addressed. So I want to thank you very much for this opportunity, and I
Thank
hope you
you.
have a good
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and all the legislators here for your time. I, for one, have learned a lot, so thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Next time, stay on.
Adios.
Enjoy Vietnam, but next time, stay on.
Now that we've seen the beach.